This is Regained Wellness Podcast with Jamie Logie, episode 115, Food Storage Tips to Save You More Money. Hey guys, what's happening? Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Jamie Logie. I run regainedwellness.com, and thank you for joining me here today. So this is a episode I've been talking about doing kind of in conjunction with the last few, where I talked about, potential ways you're not using your fridge correctly, which sounds kind of like a weird thing to not have to, think of or worry of, but there's actually a structure and a system to the way your fridge is supposed to work, so it keeps your food fresher and actually keeps you healthier. So definitely go back and listen to that episode. And I do a few shows on, better budget shopping and how you can save money on groceries and stuff like that. So the main thing is all this stuff. If you go to the show notes today, which is going to my website. So if you go to regainedwellness.com/115, I'll link those other episodes up, because then you can kind of see them all in one place and get an idea of this, overall picture of, how to get the best food, how to properly keep it, the fridge issue. And then what I'm talking about today is food storage, which is hopefully something you will be interested in, because the amount of food people are throwing away each month is pretty horrific, and it's costing you a lot of money over the course of a year. And there's just a few, I'll touch on some simple storage tips and just things you might not have heard of before or were aware of that can help extend the life of your food at home, and then that's saving you money in the long run. So these all sort of work hand in hand together. So that'll be regainedwellness.com/115. And everything will be linked up there in one spot. And while you're at it, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. Primarily, I assume, on iTunes. It's where most people listen to stuff. But basically, anywhere where you find podcasts, I should be there. Whether it's Google Play or Stitcher Radio for Android, pretty much anywhere. So if you like podcasts and you have a way to search and find them, look for it wherever you get your podcasts. So let's get right into this show. So hopefully my voice sounds pretty much understandable. I just had a wisdom tooth yanked out yesterday, so it was a little swollen. So I don't know if that's affecting how I'm speaking right now. It sounds okay to me, but bear with me if it doesn't. I think it's not too bad. It went pretty well. I only cried twice, but they got that sucker out. It was in there, let me tell you. So if you haven't listened to the episode on how your fridge should be properly used, I'll give you a quick little summary of all that. So your fridge is designed basically to distribute coldness throughout itself. So the coldest parts of the fridge are up high and in the back, while the warmest parts are down low in the vegetable drawers. So those drawers are meant for fruit and vegetables. So they're, the vegetable crispers, they call them. And that system of the cold distribution and the warmer and cooler parts is specifically designed because produce needs to be kept cold, but not too cold, because that can kill it just as much. So it's like when you're in a grocery store, you see, the fruit and veg are out in the open and kind, not refrigeration units, but that sort of thing where they're not super cold, but just a little bit. So that, your fridge is designed to balance out that distribution. So what happens, a few things, if your fridge is too full, it doesn't allow for cold air to circulate properly, and then that can lead to an increase of warm spots in various places, and that can lead to more spoilage. So if you're wondering why certain things are going bad, it might be what they're placed in the fridge, like milk being the main example, which it should be kept up top and in the back where that coldest part is. You don't want things that can spoil easily on the door as well, because the door is constantly open and closed into the warmer part of the kitchen, and the kitchen tends to be the warmest room in the house as well. So it's exposed to more warm air throughout the day, can spoil it as well too. And then the other reason with that distribution thing is you want to make sure you get rid of moldy food as soon as possible, because that air circulation, but you know how like the weather systems work, and the like, you know, the high pressure systems and all that stuff come in, and they look like they sort of follow a figure 8 pattern. It's the same thing in the fridge. If you have moldy food in one part, that can contaminate foods in all the other parts of the fridge, because the mold is distributed throughout the fridge due to that cold air circulation throughout it. So that's the reason you want to keep your fridge up to shape. So when it comes to, so speaking of that, we do throw, and I'm sure you're aware, you might consciously track or unconsciously know how much food you're throwing out each month, but it is quite a bit. The average North American is wasting around 20 pounds of food a month. So that's the average. Some people, it's a lot more. If you add this up, this is around, you know, this is costing us around $2,000 per year, or the price of a couple lattes from Starbucks. But like $2,000, like 2,000, that's a very high-end giant TV that you could have in your house instead of all this food we're throwing out. That's the problem with eating well, is you want to have your diet based around real whole foods and fresh foods, but they can go bad quick if you're not on top of it. Like, how many times have you gone, you know, to grab something vegetable-wise or salads, and it's just this brown, mushy pile of crap that's just gone bad? Or you're always throwing out, you know, like strawberries are going bad quick, or berries. You're not able to get through them quick. So that's one of the challenges, is you want to, you know, eat as clean as possible, but it means you have to really be on top of what you're eating, and you might not be specifically planning around those certain items that day, that you miss a day or two, and then they're gone. And then that's when it's easier to turn to some, you know, processed or junk, fast food, whatever, because that other food's gone bad so quick. So it's having to be strategic with what you're buying, knowing what you need, not buying too much, not overbuying. You know, when you go to the grocery store, is as important as a shopping list is, it's just as important to have an inventory list, so you're not overbuying on things you might already have. You get there and you can't remember if I already had whatever. You buy it, then you have too much. And if, you know, fresh whole food, that's the advantage. The fact that it goes bad is the reason you want to be eating it. It means it has biological value. They call it BV in the food, and it's just, you know, at that rate of how quick it can break down, which means it's a real living, natural, full of nutrients, enzymes, stuff like that, compared to, say, like an Oreo, where you could leave that sitting on a countertop for a year and it's going to look the exact same a year later. You've probably noticed that, like in your car, where you're cleaning out and you find old McDonald's French fries, or in your couch cushions you find Cheetos. They're exactly the same, but if you left an apple core in there, it's not going to look too good, and that's because of that biological value. And that's why you want to be eating those things, because that's got all the nutrition in it, where something that doesn't break down or rot is basically devoid of any biological value. So the main big reason to be eating real whole foods, but it is a challenge because the stuff does go bad quick. So I'm going to go through a bunch of food storage tips, and then why they're beneficial and how you can use them. I've got about 15 here. Some of these you might have heard of, but some I think are very interesting for those common things that go bad quick. So first one has to do with onions. You want to keep them, to have them last very long, is to store them actually in pantyhose. So if you put one in, tie a knot in between each onion and separate them that way, you can get up to 8 months out of onions that way. So and that's the thing, like onions are another cheap item that you always buy them in the big bag. So using them this way gives a, you know, really great extension on their lives. Speaking of onion, if you take green onion, which is really good in cooking, it gives a good texture. There's some good nutrients in green onion too, even though it's thin and whatever. You might not think it's nutritionally dense, but it's a good item. It's easy to use. You can toss it in stir fries, whatever. So to keep it almost lasting indefinitely, chop up the green onion and put it in a plastic water bottle, and then put that in the freezer. So that's going to extend its life, and it thaws really quickly as well too, because it's thin and cut up. So you can actually take them, like if you're cooking something, just take them from that bottle, dump them right into whatever you're cooking, and they'll thaw as they cook. Another good one is talking about herbs, which are one of the best sources of antioxidants out there, specifically things like oregano and sage and thyme. And any herb is good because they're full of, like I said, those antioxidants and phytonutrients. They make your food taste better. They're easy to use. They're cheap. You can grow them. If you want to extend the life of them, you want to cover the leafy part of the plant in wrap plastic and then use an elastic at the base of that plastic and then put it in the fridge. Herbs dry out extremely quick, whether they're sitting on a counter or in the fridge, and this plastic really helps extend the life of them. The growing your own is a great thing too, because it's, like I said, it's, you know, pennies to plant some of these things. And then there's nothing better than fresh herbs. If you have somewhere outside and like a potter's plant where you can put them in, or like somewhere where you can store them. You can do it even in apartments if they have it, just some access to sunlight, and you can put them on windowsills and stuff. So nothing beats being able to use fresh herbs like that. Let's go into avocado, one of the best healthy fat sources out there. Also good source of fiber, some protein in there, but it goes bad extremely quickly. And it's not that it actually goes bad, it's just it oxidizes from the oxygen in the air, turning it brown, same way like an apple core would. So it doesn't mean it's necessarily bad, but it looks very unappetizing at that point. So if you've made or if you have like half an avocado, take some lemon juice and put it on the exposed part of the avocado, then wrap that in plastic and put it in the fridge, and that'll keep it from going brown. So it'll just look more appealing, and it'll last a bit longer too. Same thing if you make your own guac, which is a really good, again, nutrient dense. If you use like your own tomatoes, you use some cilantro, another, you know, high source of chlorophyll, you know, throw in maybe a little bit of hot sauce. You're gonna have some lime juice for that citrus. It's a great, you know, guac works awesome in lots of things, whether it's like in scrambled egg dishes, or if you have some good natural tortilla chips. And it's very filling, like that high saturated fat content, but that good fat keeps you fuller and for longer. And when you add in that extra stuff, like, you know, there's some more, you can use some of the green onion, the cilantro, the lime juice. Yeah, really nutrient dense food, and you can make it at home, and it's cheap, and it's going to taste better than any store counterpoint, except maybe Chipotle. They've got guac mastered. But if you make your own guac, you can it works well if you use those olive oil cooking sprays. Spray that on top before wrapping it, putting back in the fridge, and it's the same thing like how the lemon juice acted on the cut avocado. It's going to help keep it fresher and for longer. So then let's move on. Another tip, you've got, you know, green leafy vegetables should make the core of a lot of your nutrition, and especially your vegetable intake. And again, that stuff can go bad pretty quick. So the first thing is taking when you have a bunch of vegetables, like green leafy stuff, whatever it is, if you keep it in a grocery bag, people just sometimes throw them in the fridge like that, but you want to take the whole bag, squeeze all the air out of it, and wrap it tightly before putting it back into the vegetable drawer in the fridge. That's going to take all the oxygen out of it, and the oxygen is what breaks down our foods. So most people just don't store it properly. So take that shopping bag, squeeze the air out, wrap it up, put it back down. But here's another interesting thing. If you actually keep salad, so if you have it washed, dried, and a large amount of it, if you wrap it in a very thin towel and kind of wrap it all up together, you can get an extra week out of it. So if you eat quite a lot of salads and you find it's going bad because you're not able to get through it as quick, try that trick with the towel. Same thing with a few other vegetables here, specifically the crunchier things like celery, broccoli, you know, and lettuces as well too. They start out fresh, but they can wilt and go pretty soft relatively quick. So they do better. Anything like Crunchy Wise does better when it's stored in tin foil and then put in the fridge. That keeps a little more of the moisture in it. It prevents it from drying out. And same thing, you'd get, you know, double the life out of it compared to how you normally stored it. So try that one. Moving on, other vegetable here too, asparagus. Good item. And we're getting into, depending where you live, this is when it becomes a little more seasonal and available. cheap, easy to use, can go with all sorts of dishes. It actually does better when it's stored like flowers. So you want to find some sort of jar or a vase, water in the bottom just like you would, and put the asparagus in like flowers, and that's actually how it does better to keep it longer. Like I said, this stuff doubles the lifespan of a lot of these items. Then we're going into mushrooms. Super nutritious. Again, works well in. I like using mushrooms like shiitake mushrooms and whatever, dicing them up, sautéing it with a little olive oil, some garlic, whatever, and then mixing it in with some scrambled eggs. And that's a good meal right there. But most mushrooms come usually in some sort of plastic-y type container with some saran wrap or thin plastic on top. Mushrooms actually do a lot better in paper bags. So probably unlikely you find them sold like that, but whatever or however form you get them, bring them back, buy a little just lunch paper bags, brown paper bags, put them in there, and they do a lot better, keep fresher, taste fresher, and last you a while. So I talked about, being careful of milk because it can spoil pretty quick. I'm not a big fan of milk as it is, but if you do drink it, like I said, keep it back up high. And then with some other milk products, specifically cheese, me personally, I do like cheese. I know cheese can be tough for some people as far as it can be, very binding. It's got quesotoxins, which some people, it can have addictive properties, and a lot of it is really over processed. When you see those giant cheese bricks that are in the stores by like Black Diamond or depending on what you get, they're like $6.99 for this long block. They're pretty much tasteless. A lot of those they're kind of like rubber. There's a lot of the moistures out of them. It's not a true cheese product. I personally like super old cheddar, which can have some benefits as far as some of the, the healthy bacteria that goes to make it. I like old, like 5-year-old, 7-year-old cheddar, crazy old stuff. But same thing, like these can dry out quick. If you have cheese, when you cut it, you want to put maybe a little bit of butter lightly spread on the end, and that's going to prevent the whole thing from drying out and taking moisture from the rest of the cheese. And that's another one that actually is better stored on, say, the door of the fridge because it can handle a little warmer temperatures. It doesn't need to be super cold. And if it's too cold, it actually takes away, it sort of mutes some of the flavors. It's the same thing like red wine. If you don't really want to keep red wine really in the fridge, if you do, maybe just for a little bit, it's okay to be slightly chilled. But with something like that, when it's too cold, it mutes those flavors again, so you don't get that full taste experience from it. I can go on for wine for a while, so maybe we'll save that for another show. So cheese, keep it on the door. It can even do well down in the vegetable drawers as well. So I talked about onions at the start of the list and storing them in the pantyhose, tying the knots in between them. Most people, like if you have some sort of pantry or larder, I don't know where you store your stuff, but you tend to store potatoes and onions together. That's something you want to split them up. Those things don't play too well together. The onions, the potatoes basically can spoil a lot quicker when they're with the onions because the onions emit a gas that can make the potatoes sprout quicker, dry them out. They need to be stored separate. But potatoes do really well stored with apples for some reason. The apples actually prevent them from sprouting. They're not similar foods, but they sort of act in the same way, even though one's like a tuber, one's a fruit. But they share a little bit of the same properties, so they do better in that situation. So if you have some place where you store that sort of stuff, you can keep those two together. So apples here's a few fruit tips. So I mentioned, you buy a thing of strawberries or blueberries, fruit goes bad so quickly, and especially when one thing gets moldy, the whole batch goes to hell with it. You've noticed that if you have strawberries, once the one goes, the whole thing goes down. So what you want to do is when you bring them home, Ideally, depending on where you get your fruit, probably in all situations, specifically if you get them from a grocery store, like a big supermarket, you can almost guarantee that that food has been exposed to quite a lot of pesticides, especially in not just the growth phase, but the transportation, the harvesting, the transport, the shelving. They pick up a lot of stuff, and there's certain fruits that can take on more toxins. Not better is the wrong word, but they're more apt at having those toxins ingrained into them than other fruits. So specifically fruits with very thin skins, and that's going to be, strawberries, berries, fruits that obviously have a natural wrapper to them, like a banana or an orange or a pineapple or things like that. They are your safer bets as far as, even if they've been exposed to toxins, they do better at obviously not leaching them in, where strawberries, blueberries, peaches, those things are some of the worst for being contaminated quicker. So wherever you buy them, even if it's at a farmer's market, they're going to be probably better, but you don't know what it's been exposed to or who's possibly been touching it. So you do want to soak and rinse them under cold water for a little while when you get them home. But the better thing you can do is make your own natural cleaning and kind of a preservation system as well too. So what you're going to do is take 1 part vinegar and 10 parts water and swirl those berries together. That's going to keep them from going moldy and soft. You're not going to taste the vinegar in it, but it's going to greatly extend the life of the berries. Like I try to get through probably, the king of fruits, I'd say, is probably blueberries as far as an antioxidant powerhouse. Blackberries are up there. Any berry, raspberries, strawberries, those are some of your best bets, along with citrus fruits, as far as they're not too heavy in fructose and natural fruit sugar, which if you have problems with, diabetic issues or, obesity, weight, you actually want to be careful of fruit, because it does spike your blood sugar, because our fruit has really evolved and been hybridized into these super modern, large, fleshy, overly sweet fruits, where fruit in its natural state is actually a little more bitter. Like when you eat something like blackberries, they're not super sweet unless they've gotten too ripe and soft. They have that almost astringent, bitter taste. Or if you've ever had, picture like a Granny Smith apple or a cooking apple. That's more what fruit is actually like. But, over the generations, we've hybridized them, which is different than genetically modifying things, which is a whole issue in itself. But just the natural way that farmers have always been able to breed out traits they don't like and enhance the traits they do like has kind of transformed our fruit away from something that it really isn't. Like if you take a banana in its natural form, you probably wouldn't actually recognize it. They're they originated in kind of Southeast Asia, and they were really small. They were super fibrous and tough, and they were so full of seeds. They're probably inedible, or they'd be very, like for what we're used to, they'd be really tough for us to eat. And we've hybridized and evolved these bananas into these bright yellow, fleshy. Have you ever found a seed in a banana? It doesn't happen anymore. And when's the last time you've actually had a seed in any fruit, like whether it's grapefruit or watermelon? This is what like hybridization is we kind of push those traits away that we don't want. So that's why, as good as fruit is, obviously you should be having it. If you are, like I said, if you have these issues with blood sugar in one form, you want to be careful of those super sweet, overly sweet fruits. And your best bet are the berries, not just nutrient wise, but they're lower in the natural sugars, but so full of, in blackberries and blueberry case, like the antioxidants, phytonutrients, the whole deal. So they're awesome, and I'll eat a ton of those, but they go bad so quick, and I've thrown my fair share out, and it sucks because that's, not that they're super expensive, but you hate wasting food like that. So try this vinegar solution: 1 part vinegar, 10 parts water. Swirl them around. You'll keep them going quite a bit longer. So speaking of the bananas, actually, they're an interesting fruit because they actually, if you store, usually you have one of those, fruit sort of bowls, and it's maybe got the banana hanging part at the top. You can put them over. Ideally, you want to keep bananas away from all other fruits. Again, they don't play well together. So bananas emit what's called ethylene, and it's a gas, and it accelerates ripening in other fruits. And I have no idea why they do this or what function that serves. It's probably a self-preservation thing as far as to keep away insects would be my guess, just thinking off the top of my head. The ethylene would probably repel little insects from destroying it. So, but in that case, it accelerates the ripening in the fruit. So it needs to be stored on its own. It's like if you ever need to ripen something pretty quick, put it in a bag, in a brown paper bag with a banana, and wrap it up, and it'll get ripe. Like say like an avocado or something like that. Avocados are either rock hard or they're complete mush. It's hard to get them at the perfect point. So if you get one that's super way too hard to use and you need it a little quicker than whatever, try it. Yeah, paper bag with a banana, and that'll help accelerate its ripening. So keep them somewhere else stored away from other fruits. And actually, to keep bananas going longer too, bananas are the same thing. They're either super like raw almost, or they get to that mushy phase. Mushy phase. It seems like in the blink of an eye. Ideally, though, you don't want to eat fruit that's too ripe. As far as that really enhances the sugar content in it. And in the case of bananas, it's actually better to get what they call resistant starch, which is really good for your gut bacteria. And it helps feed the good bacteria, help keeping a healthier microbiome. So one of the things that's high on that list for containing that resistant starch is green bananas. So it's not the most normal experience because it's not that they're crunchy, but we're used to that mushy banana. But if you have a half of a green banana every now and then, it's really going to help you with that healthy gut bacteria. And then again, to keep them going a little longer, you can use some tin foil again or some plastic wrap, and you're going to put that on the crown. So that's where all the bananas are joined together at the top. So wrap that with either tin foil or plastic wrap, and that's going to give them a couple extra days actually as far as keeping them fresh. So, okay, we're flying along here. I'm going to do 2 more tips. I think that'll be good. With all of this, I actually wrote this massive blog called 100 Great Tips to Save Money on Groceries. And that part of that includes a lot of these food storage tips because, like I said, if you're wasting that food, you're spending more money on it. So food storage goes hand in hand with saving money. So I'll link that blog up again. So regainedwellness.com/115. And yeah, it's got every tip you could ever think of in one spot. So check that out. So last 2 tips going to be with tomatoes. Same thing with, like, I was talking about the berries and whatnot. Like once one of them goes bad, the whole thing tends to go. And tomatoes do that very easily. So most people store them in plastic bags in the fridge. That's actually going to make them spoil really quick. They're all bunched in together. There's the oxygen, it can be too much. It doesn't circulate throughout them. Basically, don't put them in the fridge or in a plastic bag because that's going to wreck them. Tomatoes do better when they're stored in a single layer and actually at room temperature, so they can be out on the counter with your fruits and whatnot. So if you can get like some sort of cardboard single layer tray and then put them in one flat layer, that's going to make them last quite a bit longer. So let's finish last one. This is a good one I've been using lately. So it's ginger. Ginger is amazing. Antibacterial, antimicrobial, adds a ton of flavor to every dish. And same thing, you buy those big, I think they call them knots of ginger when it's that big kind of conglomerate of ginger in one shot. And then, you kind of cut off what you need, peel it, but they dry out really quickly. So ginger actually can be stored in the freezer. That'll help it basically last indefinitely. And it's even in that frozen state, you can still peel it and still grate it. So I've started doing this because not that ginger is expensive, but it's just another one of those things you keep finding yourself throwing out. And it's those little costs that are adding up to us, wasting about $2,000 in thrown out food each year. So thrown in the freezer, and that's been working pretty well. Okay, so let's call it a day right there. That's a ton of good stuff, hopefully. I mean, this might be something you want to go back and listen to just to pick up a few more of those tips, or if I went through them a little too quick. But like I said, that's why the show notes I do on my website makes it easier to see all this stuff in one spot. So regainedwellness.com/115, and I'll have that huge blog linked up. I'll do those other episodes that are relevant to this, and then you're all set. So if you like this, like I said, make sure to subscribe to the show so you get them updated automatically as soon as they come out. Or if if you have your own food storage tips that I haven't covered, like if you go through that blog, the 100 great food storage tips to save money, and you have your own that you think are good, email them to me and I can include them when I update it, or I'll do like a follow-up series on some extra storage tips. So if there's something you've always done, or you've had your family's always done, email me at info@regainedwellness.com and just tell me your favorite storage tips, and I'll try and put them all together in one spot. Okay, so that's it for me. Thanks for listening. I'll see you very soon. Bye.